Hello everyone, good morning. I believe that we are now live. So let's start with our text. So today we're going to read text 135 from our daily bread. The title is Necessary Renewal. Do not quench the spirit. Paul, Thessalonians chapter 5, versicle 19. When the apostle to the Gentiles wrote this exhortation, he did not mean that the spirit could be destroyed. Instead, he was trying to renew the mental attitude of those who were suffocating their higher spiritual tendencies. We often see who go against their own conscience in order to avoid being labeled as spiritual. Nevertheless, incarnate souls are placed in the laborious learning experience in order to rise from the world as glorified spirits. This is the highest purpose of the human school. However, humans are still a long way from the great truth. They habitually prefer strict conventionalism, and only at much cost do they open their understanding to the realities of the soul. Actually, customs are powerful determining elements in the evolutionary process, but only when inspired by principles of higher order. Therefore, we must not suffocate the seeds of the spiritually constructive life that sprout daily in our hearts under the influence of the merciful Father. There are brothers and sisters who leave the earth through the same door of ignorance and indifference that they entered it. Thus, a disciple look back on the activities of each day. They should ask themselves, what have I accomplished? Have I accentuated the traits of the inferior individual of yesterday, or have I developed the lofty spiritual qualities that I want to retain tomorrow? Okay, so let us pray. So let's raise our thoughts. Let's establish this strong connection with our Divine Father and our Master Jesus. And first, be thankful for one more opportunity that we have here this Sunday morning to learn a little bit more about the teachings from Christ through Spiritism. Be thankful for this house, the second house of love, that acts as a laboratory, as a place for us to get knowledge, to obtain knowledge, and to educate ourselves. Not only ourselves as a body, as an incarnate body, but as an immortal spirit. Be thankful for all the blessings that the Lord has been giving us since the moment we were born. And let's be thankful for all the future blessings that we know through the divine mercy will be given to help us in our moral evolution, in our journey as incarnated on this earth. Let's ask our spiritual guides, our guardian angels, the guides from FSS, that they can still help us, guide us with intuition, with their thoughts, connecting our thoughts with them, so we can make the best of our time this morning, and that after the information we'll be giving and learning together, we can use parts of it, all of it, in our guide of moral evolution. So be it. All right. Just 1 second, if I need to connect here again. Yeah. Okay, so I hope everybody can hear me okay. I think there are some comments. Good morning, bom dia, bom dia. Okay, so today we are going to talk about thought and life. What thoughts have you been cultivating in your day-to-day life? So this lecture, similar to what I did in Portuguese, is based on a book that is becoming near and dear to my heart. The book in Portuguese is called Pensamento e Vida, and in English, Thought and Life. So in addition to the book, the reflections that I would like to share with you today are based on 2 other reflections. First, one, Thought and Life, reflections with Arthur Valadares, and another one called Our Thought Creates the Kind of Life We Lead, which are reflections from Haroldo Dutra Dias. So I'll be going back and forth and interchangeably between those 2 reflections, and hopefully you will learn something today that can help us with our journey here on Earth. Oh, this is not working. So what's the objective today is to use the book and the reflections called the book Thought and Life to shine some light in understanding the importance of our thoughts in our evolution as an immortal spirit. So this book, it's interesting. I haven't seen the book physically, but it seems to be a very thin book, but with such an important and comprehensive content. Emmanuel, through the mediumship of Francisco Cândido Xavier, did an amazing job of building such a strong and solid foundation since the introduction and throughout all the topics that this book covers. It starts in the introduction itself, which is the one that we'll be doing a little bit and talking a little bit about today, is already can be one topic of many other talks. And even the other chapters, when he talks about health, he talks about death, work, our will, our what else? Our duties as an immortal spirit. It's all like a intertwined web of subjects, and all the subjects build on each other. And once he starts on chapter 1 with the mind, and so beautifully goes through this intertwined web of subjects and end with the most important piece, which is love. Because as I think Arthur mentions, when João Evangelista mentions everything starts with love and everything will end with love. So I'm still going through. Today I'm going to talk some of the reflections that I learned reading and some of the reflections that I got from listening to other people such as Artur and Haroldo, and hopefully we will be able to help us and understand what is the role of our thought in our journey here as an immortal spirit. All right, so let's go and start with the introduction. So the introduction, even though it's sweet and short, but of such a depth of knowledge. So it starts saying, we are asked by a dear friend on our spiritual plane whether we have a book that could be adapted to suit the needs of people on earth. A few pages that would speak to the spirit about problems of the spiritual nature. So as Artur mentions, this book, what he kind of call as a manual that is used for spirits that are about to incarnate. So they use some of those thoughts, and what the spirits did with the guidance of Emmanuel, they try to convey those similar messages to us here incarnated on this earth. And it's so interesting because I think as I started reading, somehow in my conscience and in so many other instances that I myself, Luis, as an immortal spirit, have incarnated, I think somehow it has rang a bell. I say, oh, I think I read that already. And of course, I believe that is the case, as this manual, as it calls, is used for those spirits that are about to incarnate. So they try to put some of the knowledge in the most simplest way for us here incarnated to understand, knowing that we do have some limitations. Sometimes we don't even understand exactly or we don't have the vocabulary to understand some of the most deepest and let's say a little bit complex schematics or concepts that the spiritual world have for us. But what they did with this book, they tried to use some analogies. They tried to use some metaphors that can help us to obtain that knowledge and apply this knowledge in every single situation that we might face here. But I would like to point out to this devoted piece where it says it's not just a manual for us incarnated, but it's those pages talk about not Luis as is Luis right now, but the immortal spirit that Luis is incarnated now. Talking about the immortal spirit, not concept, but the how. Yeah, I think we can say the concept, or how we are immortal spirits, and the issues and the challenges that we face as an immortal spirit. So those sentences can think about the circumstances that I'm living right now. So even though there are some complex concepts and things from the spiritual world that this book did a great job to translate in simpler terms, we should always remember it's just we are in this transitory limitations that we have. However, we are encouraged to think about and weigh in our scale, right? And how am I putting the efforts to deal with challenges that are just circumstantial, and balancing with the most important aspects of us as an immortal spirit that has other lives, that had other lives, and that will have other incarnation. And also about we are not only influenced by this building or by the things that are happening on earth. It shines a light as well to the influences that we are acted on from the spiritual world. So Arthur, in the beginning of his reflections, draw a connection between the earth is not alone. We are not alone. So he draws a connection to question 459 when Kardec from the Spirits book asks, do spirits influence our thoughts and our action? And the spirits answer, they often direct both. Their influence is greater than you think, for very frequently it is they who guide you, right? So sometimes we forget, and as we start talking about thoughts, we forget to pay attention to how the connection between us and the spiritual world, as we're going to see, is done through or via our thoughts. And sometimes, as we forget that we are immortal spirits, we forget a little bit to take care of this mind here, of this power instrument that God has given us, and we just think about what it is important that we do in our life, but it's not all that matters when we talk about our spiritual condition. And when we do that, sometimes we ended up compromising. We compromise with some of those, let's say, negative thoughts or thoughts that make us feel a little bit stuck. We ended up compromising not only our mental health, which is such an important topic that the world is going through right now, especially with this pandemic, but also with our physical health, right? So those, I think we're invited to always pay attention if we are fulfilling that condition, and we are aware of the condition of the mortal spirit. And I like when he says it's an alert, it's a call for us to pass through the material experience with a spiritual conscience. Yeah. And as he continues, and in the last paragraph, which is such a beautiful opening to our inner self, when he sets the stage and sets the end goal of this book, when it says the purpose, in this case the book, is to inform you yet again that our thought process is a reflection of ourself, which creates the kind of life we lead, until one day, through the millennium, we shall identify ourselves with the infinite wisdom and infinite love that constitute the thought and life of our Father. So in that bolded one, it's all up to us. It's all up to our will and how we would like to, quote unquote, manage our thought process, because however we decide to do that, that will be a reflection of the life that we would like to have as right now. And every time that we think about, all right, how do I manage my thought process? How am I taking care of my thought process to reflect the kind of life that I would like to lead? It's everything starts, and that's what we always talk about here. It always starts within us. It's always this renewing, this transformation process that we'll talk a little about later. It always begins with me. And what is beautiful, and a reflection that I hadn't kind of paid attention in the last part, which is not bold, when Emmanuel says that we will identify ourselves with the infinite wisdom, right? And that's our Father that has all the love. And when we identify with our Father thought, I thought it was interesting because here, as we have studied here before, it starts to establishing a different relationship with God, right? Before we have that image of God that we should be afraid, that we should not be close to, and that Father that is punitive, that will point the fingers, and that Father that will tell us, you should do X, but you should not do Y. And this just the last three sentences give us that God is close to us, can be close. He's always close to us. We sometimes, due to some of the path that we chose, we decided to be a little bit farther away, but God is always there. And God is not distant. And if the thought process of God would to be distant and I would never reach it, it gives me a sense of I will never be able to accomplish. But here it says the opposite. We will get there. We will get so close to the thought and life of our Father, which is infinite love. And if God is all love, it's all perfection, and one day through our thought process we will be close to that, and I don't even know how to express that into using our words, but one day we will have that thought and life process that is relative, similar to God. But as I've been talking about thought, right? The thought concept that we would like to expand here is not only the thought of, oh, I have an idea, or the intellectual thought of, I know about a theory, I know about something like academic, about my job, or anything else. So the concept of thought here is more comprehensive. Thought here equals its sentiment, its feelings, its emotions, and its ideas. So it's when I put thought equals sentiment, emotions, and ideas, it's kind of an equation here. And Joanna, in one text that the name of the text is Thought and Life as well, she says that thought and life are the terms of the human being's existential equation. For the engineers, the mathematicians, and the statisticians here, our thoughts are a key variable, a key piece of the equation of our lives, the equations of our existence. And in addition to that, our thought is the greatest or the biggest creative attribute of each one of us as an immortal spirit. this element of thinking, of creating ideas, putting ideas in an envelope of sentiments and emotions, that is such a key characteristic and a key attribute of us, that we were created image and similarity of God, that has all of that. We also have this great attribute. In addition, all the thought process, we can say that everything that we have on earth, everything that we have for ourselves, everything existed or was created first in our thoughts. What we are seeing right now is just the tangibility, is just us doing the work and putting the effort to make it seen, to make it materialize. And we can go and extrapolate and go a little bit beyond, and we can say that the universe, which was created by God, was also in God's thought before, and now that we have the universe, it's just God materialized it. So all the evolutions that we have here on earth, it's innovation, it's creation of any sort. Everything started in the thought process of one of the immortal spirits that we have here. And then after that thought process was acted upon, then that becomes reality. And I think I use that example. Let's say us, I think I can say 99, 98, 95% of us here at FSS, we went through an immigration process, right? So an immigration process, before it ever existed and ever was materialized, existed in our thought. And I gotta say, that thought is so intertwined and loaded with a lot of sentiment, with a lot of emotions, and with a lot of ideas and aspirations. Arthur actually uses one passage I think from Genesis, that Jesus said, make the light, he said, and the light was made. And I'm not sure if I translated that perfectly, but if we were just to analyze Jesus said, it's just our words, and it's just the package. It's just how we materialize our thought. But in this case of the light was in Jesus' thought already, and then he said it was just making it real. So when we put our thoughts and our ideas, sometimes when we just use the words, it's just the package. It's just, I think Sonia used, it's just the mittens that cover our thought process. And as we know, I think I still don't quite understand 100% yet, but our thoughts are like a fluid. There is so much energy that we produce when we are in that thought process. I think Haroldo uses one analogy. It's like a waterfall, and that waterfall having such a big flow of water coming down. Some of the water might be crystal clear. Some of the other water might not be that crystal clear and might have a little bit of debris that we need to transmute or change, or see why do we have those debris in our waterfall. And if the thought process is that waterfall, our sentiment, our feelings, and our emotions, those pieces will give color and life to all those thoughts. And all those thoughts are kind of energy, as I mentioned. And that energy can be on the plus side, and can be a little bit on the negative side. Sometimes we will connect more with other thoughts that are happening around us. Remember question 459. Sometimes it's just the law of affinity and attraction. We will connect to those positive thoughts. Or if we are in, as we're going to say, in a pattern of negative thoughts, we will connect to those negative thoughts. And it's through the thought that we will be able to progress, we will be able to connect with God, but it's also through our thought process that we might be stalled, that we might not take the necessary steps that we are invited to take. In chapter 1 of this book, Emmanuel kind of gives some the process, the step-by-step from process to actions. And he says, mental reflexes set the stage for the reaction of emotions. So the our mental ability will set the stage for those emotions. Emotionalism creates some ideas. Ideas determine attitudes in words that command our actions. So we have the start with our mind and mental reflections, setting the stage to create ideas, and then we transform that into actions. Another piece, Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 6, it says, Spiritus, love one another. That is the first precept. Educate yourself is the second. So here, the education piece, right? How important it is that if we were even to substitute educate yourself, educate our thoughts. And if we educate our thoughts with love, so we put love and education and instruction of ourselves, we are perfecting, we are improving with the best equation our thinking and our process. Because it's through this education, it's through of us reading this book and reading all the collection or the 5 books and so many other spiritists and other types of literature that we will be able sometimes to identify if that thought process we are on the right pathway of that thought process. And as we know, one of the biggest challenges that we have as immortal spirits in our growth is our emotional issues, right? I would not say emotional issues, let's say our emotional challenges. Those are the pieces, those are the biggest challenges that we are invited to spend all our effort and our work to try to understand first, and as we understand, change it to a better place or a better state. But there is one thing. As you can see on the axis, we have all the axes together, all the squares together, the circles together. As we are immortal spirits, we have, because of all our history with other lives and other incarnations, we have some sort of intellectual and emotional patterns. And I really like this word, pattern. So those patterns, if I chose to be on the circle ones, on the triangle ones, this is how most of the times we use those patterns to make our thought, those will make up our thoughts and will guide us in when we make some sort of decision. I think I wrote to use it. It's kind of a little bit of a software. If we imagine a little bit of artificial intelligence, with all our experience, we we develop that pattern, and that pattern it's kind of the indicative or the way that we will make some sort of decisions. I can give one example of myself, and the one that it's the one pattern that I have identified myself that I'm invited to change. So it's kind of the lack of confidence, right? When I'm making a decision, I'm always doubting myself. So this is a very strong pattern that I have identified on myself that I'm invited to change. That lack of confidence on myself, the lack of confidence in life, and the lack of confidence in God. And we can use many other examples. Sometimes we have a pattern of always comparing ourselves with someone else. Like the grass is, the neighbor's grass is always greener. So sometimes we have had so many lives that we've been comparing that comparison is still here within us. And the importance is for us to identify those patterns and start changing it to a better way. And we can use, I think Haroldo uses a longer story when some of us, maybe we're never satisfied with what we have, right? We always want something more. What is that telling us? What is that pattern that is so ingrained in ourselves? And the final example that I really liked is how it's so difficult nowadays to understand and to get or to eliminate or to get rid of violence, because we know in 2000s or I don't know how many thousands of years ago, violence was always present, and it was always a meaning of power. It was through violence that some people, and including us, including myself, it was through violence that we were able to get what we want. And we can see nowadays with this pandemic, the use of masks, there's a lot of people, when I'm not getting attention or I'm not getting what I want, I go back to my pattern of violence. I yell because I demand that what I want is done. So when education is not working, we go back to our patterns and we use those to get what we think is right and what we think we want. But we know in some of those patterns, they're still so ingrained and strong on us that it won't be possible to first identify and do all the work to change those patterns here in this life, in this incarnation. And through the divine mercy of our Father, He gives us several opportunities. So in our balance of identifying our thought patterns, the patterns of our thought process, it's important that we strike a balance between resignation and initiative. And why resignation and initiative? Because if we are so keen, we want to change, we take all the initiatives, and I identified my lack of confidence thought process pattern, and I want to change in 1 year. 2021, I need to get that done. And we know it might not be possible. Our trials and expiations are for the whole incarnation. It's not something that has that start and end date. It's not like a project. It takes a longer time. So it's important that we take action, but it's also important that we take into consideration resignation. Because we know that we will be able to do something right now, but we will need a little bit of more time to conclude and continue doing the work in different incarnations. But if we just think about resignation and say, oh my God, Luis, the lack of confidence is so hard, It requires so much work. You won't be able to do it this life. Let's wait for another. Then can you imagine with maybe other patterns that we need to change? I might not get out of the house because I'm so overwhelmed with the, let's say, difficulty. So the message is understand that our pathway, it's not a heavy burden. It requires work. It won't change overnight, but we need and we are invited to take the steps, to take action, to make that transformation. And that transformation, as I mentioned, it is a great challenge, right? It's a self-transformation journey, requires a lot of courage and requires a lot of work. Also, when we talk about, as I've been talking about reincarnation, the other lives, there are, Haroldo mentioned, two types of questions that sometimes we are invited to, we ask. It's a when question and a why question. So when we ask that when question, we might say, oh, Luis, when did this lack of confidence thought pattern started? When the issue with a relative might have started? So that when question, it gives us limited knowledge. We might be able at the end of one reflection have a list. Oh, I think this might have started, those 3 or 4 issues started in one incarnation, and now because I did something that was not right, I might end up with another issue that is within this incarnation. So what is even more important is that why question. So why, if I'm experiencing this lack of confidence, why am I experiencing that? Having that courage, Luis having that courage to ask himself, why am I facing this? Why that Luis in this incarnation, which is just a step of a bigger one, why are some of the reasons so I can start and with small bites and getting bigger as according to my strengths and according to my possibilities to start transforming that. Because Luis is comprised of so many experience that might have been bad, experience that might have been happy, less or more complex. And all that experience constitutes myself, right? And all of that experience, as I mentioned, form my mental patterns, and that determined some of my choices. But I'm getting better at that. But one thing, according to the divine mercy, God is such a knowledgeable, again, lack of English words and even vocabulary, such a great teacher. So God would never give me this thought pattern of lack of confidence to change in this life if he didn't know that I have done all my homework. All the other experiences that I had prepared me for this moment. Had prepared me and had given me all the necessary tools, mental tools, physical tools, for me to deal with this challenge, if we want to call that. So if we are facing those challenges, it's because we are prepared. We went to grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, we got good grades, and now we're in grade 4 or 5, whatever we want to call, and we are prepared. We have that knowledge, and God has confidence on us that we will be able to achieve whatever of that pattern change objective that we set for us, we will be able to do that. And that's the invitation, right? The spiritual evolution is the invitation to identify ourselves with the divine thought. If God is the creator, God has infinite love and infinite wisdom. So there's no luck or by chance. God will never go and say, yeah, Luis, let's see. Maybe you will be able to achieve what you need to achieve. No, there's no that luck or by chance, right? We are prepared. This manual, Thought and Life, has, and many others that we don't know, has prepared us, or myself, to go through this journey. So if the divine thought is the one that we should identify, what does that look like? What does this divine thought look like? So it's about love, right? There's no, if God is infinite wisdom and love, and we want to approach and get closer to God, we will one day experience that wisdom, experience that infinite love. There's no smarter choice and smarter decision than love. There's no higher wisdom than love. And as we mentioned in the beginning, when we are changing the meaning and re-signifying our relationship of God, God is not here with punishment and pointing finger at us, at myself. If I'm not able to change that pattern or whatever I need to change, is not at the end say, yeah, you didn't do it, you're going to be punished. No, God is love. And there isn't punishment, but what there is a consequence of my choices. If I'm making decisions based on the patterns that are not aligned with the divine thought, I will learn what are the consequences of that decision that I made. And the first chapter, which is so connected with our thought process, is the reflection of the kind of life that we want to lead. The mind is the mirror of life. The mind stands as the mirror of life in all places. It will always reflect ourselves on others and in ourselves. There's always, our mind will be all the reflection of our thinking, our thought process, with sentiment, with feelings, and with emotions. Of course, that mirror is not always immediate. Oh, I'm reflecting this right now, in this instance. As I've been saying, that mirror might be a reflection of such a long journey, of so many experiences. And I'd like to bring two pieces of a text called Thought and Life by Joana de Angelis, where she mentions the good man thinking correctly as a consequence of his inner reality progresses, adding strength to the structure itself. The creature of fragile moral constitution, due to its unfortunate mental constructions, gets involved in the webs of disturbing thoughts and goes on to tumultuous, unhealthy states. As a result, it is concluded that the spirit and not the body is weak or strong, according to the content of the thoughts it elaborates and to which it delivers. Thought is strength. Therefore, it acts according to its own direction, intensity, and meaning. I think, Sonia, how could we identify God's invitation in our lives? I think the understanding is that connection of thought. It's that connection when we take that deep dive within ourselves and we start, sometimes that deep dive will unravels or unveils some things that, oh, I wish I didn't have that. But it's that attitude, that virtue of self-loving and self-welcoming, to identify those patterns, whatever they are, and say, this is not, God is not, that's not how God would, or God or Jesus would react and would conduct through the path of life. So that reveals one area that we will need to improve in ourselves. And Eric said, we have the tools and God doesn't give the burden heavier than what we can sustain. But that doesn't mean it will be easy. Absolutely, it won't. It will be the most challenging thing in our life. Absolutely, yeah. Oh, I need to go fast. So, another analogy and metaphor that I liked is some of the relationships that we have, family, work, friends, and any places. So it's kind of two parcels of land. In those parcels of land, we might have an area in that parcel of land that we have harvested already. We have cultivated something. And when we interact with those other parcels, my wife, my family, it's like we are kind of in that connection. So let's say my wife, which she is, if you know her, such a patient soul, and I am a little bit more anxious. And God, with the goal of balancing the energies, God puts people with more cultivated parcel of land in the patient. He would put more, a little bit more of the anxious people around, so we can balance and we can help each other. Same way as I'm a little bit more anxious, God gave me another immortal spirit to be at my side to balance and give me some of that patience. But sometimes we would have some of those parts of the parcels of land that are not cultivated. And it's up to us what we would decide to cultivate in those pieces of land. As we always like to say, when if we want to cultivate virtues, the harvest will be a good harvest to collect, or to harvest, not collect, the results of those virtues. However, if we decide to cultivate something that is not a virtue, or we think is a virtue but it actually is not, we will also cultivate those, let's say, not so good results. As an example, if I'm always irritated, let's say if I have kids, right, and if I'm a little bit violent or irritated, I will be cultivating some of those seeds into my child's growth and path. And if that child grows to be more irritated, again, is that mirror of life, right? I will be cultivating something, and I will be reflecting something of myself in that child. And about the Spiritism, there is a sentence part that I didn't understand, that he was talking about a little bit of Spiritism and Christ when he says, in its ascension from earth, plane towards God under the leadership of Christ, it might be compared to a rough diamond excavated from the dark interior of the earth, which under the guidance of the stonecutter advances toward the magnificence of light. And I think, Sonia, in your question, I would add one more piece. We've been talking about God, but maybe is it God too, the concept of God is too far away? But God in its mercy gave us Christ. And the invitation of Spiritism is to have Christ as our guide, as our model. But not our guide and our model to stay on the shelf. Spiritism, with all the knowledge, asks us for a step forward, a step that we take a more active role, an active role to go to navigate deeper in ourselves, to bring our thoughts, our ideas and feelings closer to the standard of Christ. If we get closer to the standard and the patterns of Christ, we will be in the journey towards that infinite love and infinite love and wisdom. And we all know, even though that maybe sometimes we forget, we are not created to nurture those negative feelings and thoughts, because we know when we do that, we tend to get sick. We know that God created us for creativity, to be kind, to be benevolent, and to have that constructive action. Because we know if we learn about Christ's life, that was its standards. If we it's kind of a logic. If we aim to identify in ourselves what is that is not aligned with the Christ's pattern or thought pattern, if we identify that, we will be able to start doing the work. As Eric just mentioned, it's not easy. It requires a lot of effort, so we can get even closer to Jesus and God. And we know that Spiritism, with all the wealth of knowledge, is a powerful tool for us to do that. But it's important. Spiritism itself will not do the work, will not do the job. We are invited to use the knowledge, but to do it, it's up to us to take that action and to make that change and to cultivate those values that will change our stance and our posture as towards a spiritual life. And just to end, I would like to end with love. It's all about reflection. It's all about mirror. And I just want to get the first sentence from the love title of the last text from the book. Pure love is the Creator's reflection in all creatures. I think maybe myself, my mirror, it's a little bit misconfigured, or it's not set up very well, but we know from its creation, it's the reflection of love. It's me, it's up to me to take those initiatives, take that deep dive of self-transformation, and really understand myself, really watch myself unveil and remove a little bit of the veil of things that I have been doing that are not aligned with the divine and Christ's thought, so I can start that change. And again, the burden is not heavy. It's not supposed to be heavy. It's supposed to be light. And we will have as many opportunities with the mercy and love of our God to make all those changes. And Christ has given us that important invitation that it's essential that we navigate through this path of self-knowledge. Sometimes we'll be challenged. Sometimes it might hurt a little bit. But if we think about the whole process, that we have a goal to get closer to God, to change those patterns, we will be able to reap all the benefits and all that happiness that we aim so much. All right. That's it. I pass a little bit. But if we don't have any questions, thank you. Oh, the influence that we receive from the imperfect spirits are permitted by God to test our faith and constancy in well-doing. Perfect. And the energy created by our thoughts influence our health as a whole. Absolutely. Oh yeah, there's a teaser for tomorrow. Tomorrow we will be talking about that, the energy created. Oh, great, Sonia. Looking forward to connect thought and energy, and how we can do even a better job on that. Thank you very much. Let's do our final prayer. So once again, let's raise our thought as we learn, our thought as emotions, our thought as feelings, as ideas, and get closer and closer to our Father and to our model, Christ, and express our gratitude for this opportunity to learn a little bit more about this book, Thought and Life, to learn how important it is to us to watch and pray, to connect with our guardian angels, and that connection is all made with our thought process. Let us be aware, let us watch and maintain that thought connection, that energy, align with virtues, with love, with justice, and with charity. Thank once again for one more opportunity to do the work with Jesus, to do the work with our spiritual guides here in our second home of love. Ask that we have and continue having a blessed Sunday, a blessed week, where we can identify some of our patterns of thought. If we identify, we can self-welcome those thoughts, because they are part of our life. And they are here for us to serve as a purpose. And we are capable, and God has given us everything that is required for us to be successful in this journey. May we have a blessed week, and so be it.